welcome to the nail bucket exercise, the third exercise in the training series based on the production Skillshare day that we did, and I keep saying, so thank you for bearing with me on these intros. We're going to jump right back in with all the skills we've learned so far. Today we're going to be looking at pan, zoom, movement, and one bonus feature potentially which we'll keep in the back of our pockets because I don't want any spoilers. So what I'd like you to do is open up the third exercise, nail bucket, and let's get to it. Upon opening, you will see a lovely drawing of a proscenium arch, once again drawn by the fantastic Adam Taylor. Thank you again for producing these original documents, and they have been the cusp of all my training for over the years. They are brilliant. So, what is this? What's going on? What are we doing? You've brought me here. We're looking at a cross arch. It's a lovely drawing. What do I need to do? So, there's a nail in a bucket. What I haven't done is, well, what we've done, we've accidentally left some nails around the cross arch. Damn it. So, what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in. So I've just zoomed in on the left leg. Oh, there's a nail. I'm going to select that nail. I'm going to right click because I like to do a right click move. I'm going to choose a base point, doesn't matter where in this case, and what I want to do is just put the nail in the bucket, and that's the name of the game. This is going to combine our zoom, pan, selection, and movement skills. So again, I'm going to work methodically. Now, here comes the first challenge. If I use the green selection, I'm going to highlight all of the cross arch. However, if I use the blue selection, I can select just the nail. Remember that difference between green and blue. Green, you can partially touch any geometry and it will select. Blue, you have to fully encompass. I'm going to move it, select it, zooming out. I'm going to zoom back in, using my crosshair as knowing as where I'm going to zoom in and out from. I'm going to zoom back in on that cross arch. I'm going to hold down the middle mouse button, or type pan for those with a touchpad, you brave souls. And I'm going to work my way up the leg of the cross arch, selecting, right clicking, moving. Do this at your own pace, follow along, see how you get on. This is quite labour intensive, isn't it? I don't have to zoom in that far, I can just about see that nail. There you go, that's 5. How many more can we find? Oh, I did miss one here. Oh, there you go. I'm going to use blue selection again. So you can see I'm instantly using the blue selection. I'm not lassoing, so I'm clicking once and releasing once I'm using the selection. So I'm finding my next nail. Where are you, nail? There you go. I'm clicking once, releasing, dragging my box to the right to get a blue. Right click, move. So, we can carry on doing this for quite some time. There's a lot of nails in there. I think there's about 28. I should really check that. However, that's besides the point. The key thing is that you've had a little bit of practice, and do practice. Don't just kind of go, oh, hang on, there's a better solution to this. Do use this time and moment just to try and find as many nails as you can. But part of it is to understand the frustration of when you're working on drawings with a lot of detail in, having things just on one layer or one level, it's really difficult to work with. Those adjustments become very difficult, particularly for thinking, oh, you didn't actually mean to put the nail there or that particular feature there. You have to go around the entire drawing to deal with it. It's not practical, it's not cost effective, it's stressful. There's things we can do, and I've already given the keyword away, it's layers. Layers are the key here. Similar to Photoshop, if you've used that before, what we can essentially do is assign objects or geometry to a layer, and hopefully if that layer is named correctly, we can isolate objects within that layer to then make them visible. So let's hop back in there. So I'm going to zoom out for my bucket. How do you tell when something's on a layer? If I select something, we'll just keep an eye on this box up here. This is actually the layers box. There's a lot going on here, so I'm not going to look at too much at these buttons. I'm going to be focusing on this drop down for the moment and this button, but let's keep an eye on that drop down. When I select something, that drop down changes. Now you notice when I've selected something orange, is to change that drop down to orange, timber, 0.3. Okay, so that's on that layer. Good. If I now zoom in and select something on the pink, that's on HID det 0.13. Now, I know a little bit of abbreviation, hidden detail 1.3. There's a limit on that bar on how long it is. So if we'd actually type in hidden detail, it might be hidden and then ... and hide the rest. So if you've got layers which are quite similarly named, you might not get all the things. So someone's abbreviated that. That's great. What about that bit of hatch? Okay, I'm going to select that. Oh, that opens up the hatch editor. Well, hatches will do that, but we can hit home on our ribbon and still get the layer. Okay, it's in shading. Nice. Some of you may be noticing on the right hand side of my screen I've got this big pane that keeps changing. This is called the Properties tab. This is a personal preference. If you want to open it up, type props. And essentially mine will disappear, yours will appear if you haven't got it on already. That didn't in this case. Luckily. This is essentially, if I select something, it'll tell me everything about that object. So if I highlight that again, it's a polyline. Its color is by the layer, so the layer's 0.3. It'll tell me about the line type. It'll tell me a little bit about the geometry and whether it's closed. Now the closed geometry refers more to, kind of deals more with CNC. Don't worry about that too much for the moment. What I'm just trying to highlight is we can get a lot of information by selecting it. So that's on timber. That's on hidden detail. Okay, great. What's my nail on? Steel. Okay, that makes sense. Nails made of steel. What's my bucket on? Other materials. Okay, cool. What I can do on the drop down, now my current active layer is shown here. So my active layer is 0. Every drawing in AutoCAD has 0, no matter what. Always has a 0. It's basic, your most basic layer. What your company might have, or what your template might have, is a series of layers which you can draw on, which are created. These are all created by a user. So these are the layers in this drawing. Nice, okay. From left to right, I'm not going to hover over them because I'll get a white box that actually blocks. We've got a light bulb, we've got a sun, and we've got a padlock. And then a square, which is the color, and then finally the layer name. The light bulb essentially has the ability to turn a layer on and off. But wait, I don't use the light bulb. The reason being, if you use the light bulb, it turns the visibility of the layer off, but it does not prevent you from making that layer the active layer which you're drawing on. By when I say active layer, if you drew a line, if you drew a rectangle, you could do it invisibly, which to me is just kind of mad and crazy, and why would you ever want to do that? So I don't use a light bulb. I use the sun. If I select the sun, it does the exact same thing as the light bulb. However, I cannot select, draw, or edit that layer while it is frozen. It is kept out of the way. It's like having a series of tracing paper on top of each other. I've whipped that bit of tracing paper out. I can't affect it until I turn it back on and put it back in the stack. Great, I like that. What does the padlock do? Padlock prevents anyone from making a change. This is great for templates, like ground plans, venue plans. Anyone who's got a venue plan, wholeheartedly recommend that you padlock your standard venue layers. I've seen it where people have actually moved walls to make things fit. So, very useful padlock. And that might not be intentional, that might just be accidental. That prevents it. So, going back to where we were, most importantly, I've turned off hidden details. Now we know that the bucket's in other materials, so I'm going to turn off other materials. We know that the hatch, because I selected it, is on shading, so I'm going to turn that off. And we know that timber, by the colour, we've got a very orange screen here, so I'm going to turn off timber. Oh, there you go. Might be able to answer my question now on how many nails there are. If I use the blue box, there's 21 nails. Okay, so it's about right with 20. Though I think I said more. I'm going to go with it. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, maybe there's a way, if I select them all, I can get them all to move to a particular point. There is. I could use the properties with geometry to set a particular position, X and Y, and then they would all sit on top of each other, and I wouldn't end up with this kind of neat piling. But what I can now do is essentially go, highlight them all, move them out the cross, or just individually, one by one, move them into pieces. Now the key learning outcome I've always felt of this exercise is to show that if we draw correctly on layers, we're able to isolate features of our design to then work on. It's so important. And one thing that has always driven me slightly mad is when people put dimensions on a woodworking layer. You turn off the woodwork and all the dimensions turn off, and it's like, you have to go through and sort out the dimensions that you want and you don't want. It becomes painful. So it's always worth having a dimension layer, a notes layer, and then the layers you want. So that covers what this drop down does. And I mentioned this button, well, not so much button, but when you hover over it, it looks like a button. If I click on that, that opens up what's called the Layer Properties Manager. This is where we can actually do a lot of the management, go figure, of the layers. And I'll work from left to right again. Essentially, on the left we've got the status. So the green tick indicates what is the active layer. So if I now double click on hidden detail, you'll notice the green tick has changed, and so has our little drop down. That's basically the layer that anything we draw on now, or anything that we create, will now be put on that layer automatically. So let's just put that back to 0 for now. We've got the same light bulb, sun and lock that we had previously. So again, turn the layer on, off, visibility wise, but still affect it. Freeze the layer so we can't change it, so turn the visibility off and turn our ability to affect that layer off. Lock the layer, protect it from those pesky changes who might want to manipulate your drawing. Color. Now, color-wise, all we need to do is click on the little square and it'll open up the AutoCAD color index. Now, by default, the color index is 0 to 255, and essentially a number will represent a color, or you can essentially click, and you've also got the ability to use RGB colors, and there's the color book. If you're using, for those more advanced users who are coming back to these videos for a bit of initial training, if you're using a plot style that is driven by something called a CTB file, so if you're drawing yellow in the model space and it prints black in the paper space, you'll be using something called a CTB file. This is driven by numbered colors, not RGB colors. Don't worry if you don't understand that now. It's for people more coming back to these videos if they're interested in that particular feature. We will do a separate video on this. Essentially, here's where we can pick our color. Obviously, depending on what you've set your background of AutoCAD to, if you're going to pick a dark color, it's going to be harder to see. So pick colors that are visible to you when you're working. Now, I wouldn't recommend changing the color of 0, just because it's not a layer that we should generally be drawing on. It's kind of the base one. Excuse me. But we can change these colors. So if I change that color here, and I'm going to change that to red, and I change my timber to green, I'm just going to select a random color. If I close that down now, it will change all the objects on that layer unless there's a particular override using this properties palette. Again, this will be something we cover in another video. Just jumping back to Layer Properties Manager. So we've changed the color. This also gives us the ability to change line types. Here we can choose hidden line types. These will be loaded into templates, or you can load and create your own. And then you can set line weight, transparency, and viewports, whether you want it frozen on a viewport from creation. Again, I wouldn't really worry about that until you get there. The key burning question I can imagine that's in the back of your head is, stop waffling on it, how the hell do I create a new layer? Well, if you right click in this box, you can find just down the list, new layer. Now the other important ones, rename layer. We always like to rename things, I certainly do. If I hit new layer, I can go design feature. Oh, actually, I'm going to call that, so select it, right click, design, outline, and I'm going to put that in yellow, and I know that yellow is 50, so I'm going to do 50, and I've created a new layer, and then I can just repeat doing that. Design detail. Again, formatting is your choice. I like a little dash, I like a little underscore, so if it's a show, I might do show underscore scenic wall 1, or I might do show underscore flying to try and create subcategories. because I like to organize my layers. Now if I can essentially use, much like most softwares, you can click on the thing and it will move the list based on the name and organize them, which is quite powerful. So that's essentially it. That is select panning, zooming, moving, the power of layers, how to create a layer, and why it's really important to use them when we want to isolate things. Because had the nails been on all individual layers, that would have been really painful, and we would have had to have gone around the entire document to find all 21, we now know, of those nails. Thank you once again for joining me on this video. We hopefully will see you on the next one, which I believe off the top of my head is the big draw modify, which is going to be a big video. It's going to be probably half an hour, so have a moment for that and have something set up, because there's a lot to go through, lots of little exercises. I might break it into 2 videos, let's see how it goes. Depends how my voice holds up. But thank you for joining me, and hopefully catch you on the next one.